Everybody's logged in there and we can all share this evening together. Um, my heart really is with Effie Yeaw Nature Center. I'm very happy to do this. It was easy to put this together because all I had to do was to call up images of birds that had the location for the photo as Effie Yeaw, and I had well over 400 images that came up. And I was able to pick out from them. And so about 90% of these will be all from Effie Yeaw. I have a few that were taken elsewhere just to kind of fill in, as you'll see later, but it's mostly what you can see at Effie Yeaw. So the Effie Yeaw Nature area has probably, according to eBird, right around 175 species of birds have been recorded there. Some of these are, of course, flyovers, like the sandhill cranes that we see fly over in the fall and then again in the spring. But a lot of them are, nesting birds and things like that. So we'll take a look at some of these as we go through. See if I can start going through this thing here. I'm hitting my, well, how come this is not moving for me now? I got to get this thing rolling here. I'll try this. I'm locked into the one and only image I have here right now. Let's see if we can get this working right. Well, that one worked, at least. We'll see if the rest of them work that way too. So anyway, this is kind of what Effie Yeaw Nature Center is all about. It's education. And it's so nice, so heartwarming to see so many young kids that are getting their first taste of nature out with some really experienced docents that can interpret things for them, answer their questions. Whoops, this is going too fast here for me. Let's back up here again. There we go. Answer their questions for them, and it's just a wonderful learning experience for kids. It's a vital component of our community, and we're going to be voters. Some of them are going to be voters in the future. Things like this, we really have to make sure that conservation and nature are foremost in their minds when it comes to that sort of thing. So anyway, there was a spark bird for me when I was a young kid, like we've seen in these last images there. And the spark bird for me was the killdeer. I was 6 years old and my Aunt Lucille gave me a book called Little Killdeer. And so living on a ranch there in Montana, I was familiar with that bird, and my heart suddenly went out to looking at birds, and I got really excited. Now this killdeer we see right here kind of just stands out in this particular habitat we have here, but they're designed really to blend in with their environment, because usually you find them down along the banks along the American River there in the rocks, and they have evolved a way where they nest to really just about disappear. For example, how many killdeer do you see there? I certainly can see that one that's against the water there. But if you were to look at that image right there and start counting killdeers, I think you'd be surprised. This is because they're so cryptic in those rocks. The double band they have on their upper breast really makes them really blend in, cuts up the image quite a bit. So do we, I don't know if I can hear you or not on your guesses on that, but have you counted 13?
No. One.
There are 13 killdeers in there, yes. And that's the fun about looking at these birds. You start realizing they blend in. They're built for their environments, and the more you learn about them, it's just not seeing it and identifying as a killdeer. It's knowing about their natural history more and so forth. So you go way over here, my pointer, and there's one right there in the far left right there, and there's one down here too, almost out of the picture. So there's one, there's two, there's three. I'll probably miss some of these going across. Certainly there's four right there. Here's one right there, 5. There's one, 6, of course, 7, 8. Here's 9, I guess. Here's number 10. Here's number 11. And I think I've already missed a couple of them in here somewhere. Did I count him yet? I'm not sure. But there's 13 in there. I've done it several times and counted 13. So that's the story on that. Well, Effie Yeaw is, of course, just synonymous acorn woodpecker, and it's really a bird that dwells in the oaks that we have there. Acorn woodpeckers really do well in areas that have at least 3 species of oaks, because if one species of oak has a bad year for acorns, the other oak species might have better years. And so it can be sure that it will have enough oaks, acorns for surviving the winter. They're a sedentary species, and a family will control an area. And this is a male right here. As you see the white meeting the red right there, keep that in mind, as our next image will show you a female. But the acorn woodpeckers have this hierarchy where it's the adult male that controls the whole colony, and then the younger birds, younger males, are just helpers until something happens to the older male, and then they hope to inherit the area. So they're a very social, interesting group of birds, as you see there. Let's see if I can get this going to the next one. Here we go. And this, of course, is the female that we have right here. Whoops, back up again. The female, you can see, has a black band separating her partial red crown that she has, and then the white and so forth. So it's just kind of fun to look at these birds and see a male or a female, just learn a little more about them. And when you know that they're a social bird and have helpers raising the young and so forth, it makes it a little more interesting for us. And they're fly catchers too. I photographed this at Effie Yeaw when I saw that there was a emergence of termites from a mound. Termites were flying up in the air, and all these birds were coming in, flying around, catching these termites as they emerged. And I thought, well, this is a chance to catch one of these in flight. So I just waited around for a while and was lucky enough to get this female as she was flying up. Another bird we have, the Effie Yeaw woodpecker, is the Nuttall's woodpecker. You notice on these woodpeckers how they use their stiff feathers of their tail to prop them up so that they have a good support that way. Very important. They also have all these downy feathers around the nostrils there, much like, since they are always pecking away at the wood, there's sawdust that they have to worry about. And so just like we have masks, we work around saws and so forth, they also have their mask, and it keeps the debris from getting into their nasal passages. Kind of a cool idea. People come from all over to see this bird because it's almost a true endemic. It just barely gets into Oregon and barely into Baja, Mexico. But we're right in the heart of their range right now. So this is the Nuttall's woodpecker. And this is the male that we have here. Moving on. This little guy right here is just a little bit longer than a dollar bill. It's a dollar bill, I think, 6 1/4, and this is about 6 3/4 inches. It's the smallest woodpecker we have in North America, and it's the downy woodpecker. There's a hairy woodpecker that's a larger edition of this, basically. It has a little different marks and is at least 2 inches larger, but we don't get them at Effie Yeaw, so I didn't put in a shot of that. But you'll see them working these twigs and branches, and sometimes going after oak galls for the insects and so forth. Now here's a woodpecker that works on the ground a lot because it's an ant specialist. This is the northern flicker. The particular race we're looking at here is the red-shafted race, and you can see the mustachio mark on it here. The female doesn't have this mark on it, but you often see them working on the ground, excavating ants, and you'll see little holes that they make as you walk around Effie Yeaw that they have dug ants out of and so forth. Beautiful bird. I still remember when I saw my very first one. I remember the time, exactly where I was. I was just a young kid along the Yellowstone River in Montana. I remember hearing this bird and walked over and I saw this bird and wow, what a neat bird. They're pretty much gone right now. It's gone back to the mountains and so forth. But this is a sapsucker here, and this is the red-breasted sapsucker. And we sometimes see them there at Effie Yeaw. You look for their sap, the little holes in the sap. There's called sapsuckers. They make these little holes, indentations in the bark, which exudes the sap, like you see right here. This is a different race of the red-breasted sapsucker. This is the race that's Ruber. This was actually photographed up in, I guess, Crescent City. But I use this one because it showed the holes that it's making right here. And so insects will be attracted to this sap, and also hummingbirds will come in to that as well. It's these little whales make a nice little dinner plate for a lot of different things. So the race we have around here, this race right here is Daggedy, and then this race right here, a little bit different, you see, is Ruber. It's in the northern part of California here. But what comes into these things, like, well, I said hummingbirds and so forth, but here's a warbler that came in. This was actually taken in California, even though this bird is one that actually winters mostly down in the Bahamas and in the south. But it was a straggler up in Del Norte County, and it found a way to winter up there with these sap holes helping them out. So nutritious sap and the insects. All right. Well, I know a lot of you are pretty well advanced in your birding now, so you don't call this a blue jay. You know that its proper name is a California scrub jay. Mm-hmm. If you have an older book, you might have said Western scrub jay, but these were split off just a few years ago, and the ones in the Great Basin are now called Woodhouse scrub jay, and they're different. Genetically, their DNA is a little different, and they have a little different habits. Sound fairly similar, but there's some differences in the sound as well. But Effie Yeaw is a great place to photograph birds because they're so confiding. They're used to all the people walking around. So it's not that hard for me to get good pictures of things like this California scrub jay, because they're used to people. And as long as you don't throw rocks at them, and the kids don't throw sticks and so forth at them, we're all right. And it's just one way to enjoy it. I took this picture of the Anna's hummingbird right outside the front steps, basically, of Effie Yeaw. And this, of course, is the Anna's hummingbird, and it's a permanent resident all year long. It's the only hummingbird we have that has the crown as well as the gorget that's all bright that you see here. This is all, of course, this is not a pigment here. This is refracted light. When light hits these feathers, you can see some here where the light is different in a different angle. But when it's refracted by the light, all the colors except the reddish colors are absorbed, and so this is reflected back out to us. They actually have nested just about every single month of the year here in the Sacramento area. So, excuse me. The female that we have looks about like this. A little bit of, you can see where the light's not hitting it in the right way, but this will be reddish in the right light. So the females, they have to have some water here. During this pandemic, I don't get to talk very much, so I can tell I'm not used to talking. This little bit of gorget that it has right here is typical of a female. The immatures will lack it. A little bit of greenish along the flanks that you can see here too. And we notice how the wings are shaped. I just mentioned this because we'll have some other hummingbirds coming in pretty soon that, like black chin, that will have a little different look to them. So one, keep an eye out for them. But we're not going to talk too long about hummingbirds tonight. We have so much to cover. So keep moving on. Another bird that we really enjoy at Effie Yeaw that you hear every time you go out there is the red-shouldered hawk. And red-shouldered hawks, when they fly over, have these nice little windows in the base of the primaries. The white speckling that you see right there really allows the light to pass through, and it's a good field mark besides the banding that you see on the tail. Here's an immature bird, though. See how the banding is not as dark. Mm-hmm. The breast is not as rufous as you see here. Still, the underwing coverts are pretty rufusy and so forth. But there are the windows that you can still see in this juvenile red-shouldered hawk. Now, a rear view of the red-shouldered hawk shows how mottled it is, how speckled it is. You see a lot of white and so forth in there. And this bird is a bird that hunts primarily from a perch. It looks for main items like, oh, it loves to go after fence lizards, alligator lizards, snakes like that. It's not very adept at catching birds. It's not built for that activity, not like the accipiters are. But because you sit on a perch a lot, and you might be vulnerable to something else, you want to blend in, and so it's evolved this pattern on the back here, so that, my gosh, they do blend in. You look through all these trees, and because you have light coming through, you get a pattern of light and dark, and then this bird, you'll walk right past this red-shouldered hawk and not see it sometimes because it blends in so well. But again, like I said, the Effie Yeaw is a great place to photograph, and some of these birds are just very obliging. This is very close to the Effie Yeaw Center itself. This is the race elegans. There's a number of races, at least 4 recognized races of red-shouldered hawk in the United States. And this race that we have right here, elegans, I think because of its elegant look that it has, this has been shown to be quite genetically different than the other races. We may be looking at a different species of bird here. I wouldn't be surprised in a few years that this bird will be split off. There's a lot of splitting going on with birds these days. But there it is. It's just an amazing bird. And they're pretty confining. See the dark eye the adult has here, and so forth. And all this nice barring that it has. Gorgeous bird. Now, suppose we go down to the Everglades and we see a hawk that is also called a red-shouldered hawk. But it looks so different. We're really lucky. We've got the pretty one out here. This is, sure, no, it's a nice bird, but this is the race that's called Extimus. It's from the southern extreme of the United States, so it got the name Extimus for the specific epithet. But it's a little bit smaller than our red-shouldered hawk we have here. But you can see that it takes kind of similar prey, though, snakes and lizards, and got a frog right here that you have here. But there you can see that, it's got that kind of reddish shoulder that gives it the name here. So anyway, these may be split someday because they're so different. Genetically, this has a lot of differences from our race, the elegans. We can also, at Effie Yeaw, right now they're nesting in the big eucalyptus trees that you see on the hillside, not too far from the center. And red-tailed hawks, red-tailed hawks is nice adult. Always have these nice patagials that we have here. If you think of, I should maybe have written it out here, patagial marks are diagnostic for this buteo that we have here. They all have a bit of a belly band. The adults don't have as much of a belly band as do the immatures. Let's take a look at immatures. There we are. A little more pronounced belly band that we have here. Notice the tail has a lot of banding on it, and different than the reddish tail. So this is a juvenile bird that we have that we're looking at here. And again, you can see the patagials here are still dark when this bird is here. Often they look dark-headed with a whitish throat, and when they're perched, you see this upper breast that's kind of white and so forth. So they're big, chunky hawks, easy to identify. And we'll see them with Effie Yeaw, not as often as the red-shouldered, but they're there. Oh, one of our favorite birds. Just as I looked out the window here a minute ago, I looked up and I saw a white-crowned sparrow. This is the race Gambelii. The Gambel's race of white-crowned doesn't go up to our Sierra to breed, but it goes clear up into Canada, clear up some clear above the Arctic Circle to breed. And they'll be leaving us very soon. By the end of this month, most of them will be gone. You might get a straggler or two in early May, but they're pretty much gone. It's a nice sparrow. They'll sing in the wintertime in your gardens, and It's the birds you see in the Sierra in the summertime is the race Oriantha. They come up from Mexico. So I don't know why this guy doesn't hop up into the Sierra, but it says I prefer the Alaska highlands and so forth. So there it goes. Uh, this is the immature white-crowned sparrow. I actually say this is a juvenile white-crowned sparrow. You can see the lateral crown stripes that we have here. And at my house, and probably at yours end right now, these lateral crown stripes are now turning black. And the median crown stripe here now is white. And the supercilium in here is turning white on it. So it's going to look a lot like that. So the bills are getting brighter as the hormones are starting to rage with these birds, and they're getting the urge to migrate here. I was out one day doing the Christmas bird count with a fellow that claimed to know a lot about birds, but he said these were the females. And he was a university professor teaching a course on birds, and I didn't know what to say. I was just amazed that he thought this was the female. It's the juvenile bird. Also, we have the golden crown sparrows. They're going to also be leaving by the end of the month, and a few of them linger a little bit into May. They're a little later in getting out, but they're great. Notice they have a duskier bill. They don't have that bright pinkish bill that we had here. The golden crowns, they're well named. And these are unstreaked sparrows, no streaking on the breast like the white crowns. Here's a back view. These birds are so cryptic sometimes when they're out on the ground. A lot of these birds like to feed, whereas white crowns are more like for seeds. These birds really go for a lot of grasses. Sometimes their bills are stained with green grass and everything like that. But this is a juvenile bird here. This will get much blacker as it gets into the adult plumage here. I particularly like these birds. They're simply a West Coast specialty. It's one bird I really want to see from a Montana list. It's in my top 5 most wanted birds for Montana. And I haven't seen it yet in Montana, even though we have records of them in the state, sparingly. But I was amazed once. I was above the Arctic Circle. I was way above Nome, up where all we had was dwarf willow. And here we had golden crown sparrows lustily singing out there. And I thought, wow, all the way from my yard clear up here above the Arctic Circle. I took a jet to get up there, and this bird took it on its own little wings. I was impressed. Just so nice. Song sparrows. The habitat around this picture right here shows you that they like to be around wet areas that you can see here. A good mark on them right here is this nice mallard, whitish mallard that you have here. A lot of rufous to the wings and so forth. A lot of gray in the supercilium that you have here. Rusty looking here. Very well streaked, always with a very good, well-defined breast spot that we have there. Another shot right here of them that we have. Nice gray supercilium that we have here. Dark bill. Their song is so nice, starting off with those 3 notes that helps you identify it. A good place to see them in Effie Yeaw is down at the little pond where the wood ducks hang out. I was there today, and I had a couple of them, and they were singing right away there today. It was very nice. Also at the pond today, when I was looking, I had a Lincoln sparrow, as you see this bird here. Lincoln sparrows are smaller by at least an inch, inch and a half from the white crowns and golden crowns. So a little slimmer, little smaller sparrow. They like the more dense understory. They often will have their crest feathers raised, like messed up hair days, so to speak, with them. Again, rufous in the wings, and they always have this nice, light, buffy breast and this fine, fine streaking. They're a joyful bird to see. They don't sing in the wintertime here, unfortunately, which is a shame because they have one of the most beautiful songs of the sparrows. When I hear them in the wet meadows, if you go up to the mountains and you have an aspen grove and a nice wet meadow nearby, and you hear them singing, they're just a gorgeous bird to have. So one of my favorites, Lincoln sparrow. Right here we have another bird that I really like. If you have one in your backyard or your garden, you're really lucky because these birds are just so much fun to watch when they dig around. This is the fox sparrow. And there are several races of fox sparrow. One we mostly get around here is this one, the sooty fox sparrow. Someday these fox sparrows are going to be split off into separate species, I think, but right now they're all lumped together as fox sparrows. The lower mandible here is pale. The upper mandible is dark. That's always a kind of a nice mark. But then you see all these little markings on the breast here that are pretty diagnostic in terms of not streaks and so forth, but these little chevrons that are kind of nice to see there. Dark that you see in the back, no wing bars on them. Nice bird. Here's another shot of them right here. They often will dig with both feet together and just, you hear them scratching away. And they are a fairly confiding species sometimes too. They'll come into some pishing, that sort of thing. There's our favorite California towhee. If you have an old book, it'll say brown towhee. And indeed, it was brown towhee when I was first birding here in California. But then they found out that brown towhee in Texas and Arizona had a different song. It looked very similar, but it was a different song. And by golly, it turned out that it was a different species. And so that became the canyon towhee, and this became the California towhee. Again, they'll just pose for you. They're just a wonderful bird to see. I have to often stop on the trail and just kind of let them take their time to get off. They don't flush. They just say, "Oh, well, I'll move over a little bit," but they're just great birds. A nice metallic chink when you hear them. Another sparrow that we have. These are all sparrows we're looking at, like the California towhee. This is the spotted towhee. It had a name change too. It used to be called rufous-sided towhee, but then again, they found out different songs, different behaviors. DNA came along, and we said, okay, we have an eastern towhee, and the western one, and it was called the spotted towhee. So that's what we have here. Love the red eye on this male spotted towhee. And I'm sure many of you have these in your yards and just love to watch them dig around and scratch. They're just great birds. There we are again. You know, some people that haven't been birding start birding and they cannot believe they've never seen this bird before in their life. And because it's not a rare bird, but we haven't been looking. You just haven't been looking. And once you see that, you think, oh, you're embarrassed because what do you mean I haven't seen this bird before? They're common. Where was I? I hear that a lot from people. Our dark-eyed junco that we have here. This is the Oregon race. And again, this bird comes down during the winter months, stays with us, and then goes back to higher elevations and to the north to breed. But the juncos are always a very nice bird. The white outer tail feathers and they fly is always a good mark on them. And this nice hood that you see on this Oregon race of the dark-eyed junco is nice. Indeed, they do have a dark eye. So there we go. Moving through, we're not going to get through all the birds that we have at Effie Yeaw for sure tonight, because there's a lot of them, as we said, about 175 species or so. But we'll hit some of them that are, these have come back now in numbers, and they're really singing right now. This is the house wren, of course. Fairly plain, just kind of a plain brownish bird, often cocks its tail, that sort of thing, and will sing lustily. Here it is. Just, whoops, go back here. These birds, as endearing as they are to our eye, kind of have a mean side too. They'll defend their territories pretty much, and they kind of want all the goodies to themselves. So they have the bad habit sometimes finding other birds' nests and puncturing the eggs and saying, "This is all mine here, folks. Just forget about being in my territory." You can always notice where their nests are. They're a cavity nester, and they will drag in all kinds of sticks and everything. So if you have a nest box loaded with sticks, it's a house wren that's filled it up. They'll take in sticks, snake skins, things like that to embellish their nest. Here's another bird that's a permanent resident here. The house wrens kind of come and go, but I think we actually have two populations of house wrens that visit our area. And we'll go into that now. They're here different times of year. But anyway, this is our Buick's wren, and one of the great marks is that supercilium that You see right here that the house wren lacked. Again, a nice barred tail coxalot, a little richer brown color that we have here. Buick's wrens cause a lot of problems for people in the fact that we want to learn the bird by ear. And this bird makes it really tough because it has around 24 different songs. And many times, until you can hear the little overtones, the little gasp and so forth that it has, you wonder, what am I hearing? And many a good birder has gone after this, chasing down that song, only to find out that it's a Buick's wren singing. So keep that in mind. We are Buick's wren going down. Their bills are really designed to be spider specialists. They can reach into little crevices and grab spiders and things like that. They're just great birds. Here's our little house wren again, little Jenny Wren, as some people call her. But see, no supercilium on that at all, right there. All right, her tail's not cocked in this, or its tail's not cocked in this position. The sexes are pretty much the same. I don't think we can sex male and female house wrens except by maybe by behavior. That's about it. Another favorite of mine at Effie Yeaw, and indeed they like Effie Yeaw. They often nest under the eaves at Effie Yeaw Nature Center. This is our black phoebe. It's a gorgeous bird. It's a West Coast specialty, basically, although it goes clear down into South America for its long range. But doesn't go too much farther north, up into Oregon a little bit, but that's about it. But this bird's a permanent resident, and I'm always amazed. Here's nesting. They like, if you put a little platform under your eave of your house, you'll have a nest of them, particularly if you have water nearby. They like to be near water, like swimming pools will work even. And they'll make this little mud nest and lay their eggs in there. They like to have a roof over their head, in other words. So, but I really am amazed that black phoebes being a permanent resident because they're really an insect eater. Mm-hmm. They don't eat the seeds and things like that. Some berries maybe, but not, they go after the insects. Well, how many times have we been out in the morning on some cold December or January day? It's 30 degrees and nothing is stirring, and these birds are somehow making a living. And I say, well, how are you finding the insects? I see nothing around here for you to eat, but they persist. So does my admiration for them. If you're lucky once in a while along the American River, you see sage phoebes coming through as well. Sage phoebes, like our black phoebe, will do a lot of tail wagging. The phoebes do a lot of that tail wagging. So you can look for that apricot under belly that it has here, with the same kind of bill, same kind of structure that our black phoebe has. Sage phoebes normally don't stay in the valley here to breed, although we've had some recent breeding records, but they breed all the way from central Mexico all the way up to, I've seen them clear up at Denali National Park in Alaska. So quite a wide range. They seem kind of leap over the Sacramento area for some reason. I'll check my time here, see how we're coming along. Nice thing about doing a Zoom, you can leave anytime, and I'll never know. I'll just keep rattling along here. I love talking about birds. I'm sure a lot of you are recognizing every single bird. I thought about putting the names down, as I did that for the Perennial Garden Club I gave a talk to the other day. But a lot of you know what these birds are already, and we're just talking a little bit about natural history and just why we like them so much. Notice the very thin little bill on this guy right here. A bit of an eye ring, kind of filled in in front and back at least. There's a real good mark on this bird though right here. And here we have the greater wing coverts, and the tips of those greater wing coverts are white. And here we have the median wing coverts up here, and they're white there. This doesn't always show real well, but what really shows is the dark area here. Excellent field mark, because we'll have another bird that looks a lot like this, and the black will be in the greater wing coverts here. So anyway, these, I only had 3 in my walk today, and at Effie Yeaw. They're just about gone right now. They're a tiny little bird. And only the male has this ruby crown that only it shows when it gets agitated. But that's a really good mark if you can see that on the bird. Females don't have it, and they don't always express the ruby crown on it that we have here. But you can see the field marks right here that we're talking about. The anterior, the posterior and anterior wing bars that we have here, and I always love the yellow soles that they have on their feet. That's something to note, really, because it helps you identify this bird from the next one we're going to see here.
Wait, what is it, Ed?
A ruby crown kinglet.
Okay, thank you.
I hadn't said that, I guess, had I? No. just assumed we all knew it here. No. I'm glad you asked the question. Ruby crowned kinglet. Yeah. Well, Regulus calendra, I think is what it is. So anyway, this is a bird that has found its niche by, you'll see it fluttering under leaves sometimes, and it can glean insects from the underside of leaves by fluttering there, and it can exploit a niche that other birds can't do. So they're very successful. They go away to breed in the coniferous forests, the mountains and so forth. Unfortunately, they used to breed in the Sierra, but they seem to have shifted the range farther north. Now, maybe it's global warming, I don't know. But we find very few now. I don't find them at all when I was doing my breeding bird survey in the Crystal Basin. But in Montana, I go down the streets in Bozeman, and I see conifer trees, and they're singing their hearts out at the tippy top of the conifers. So ruby crown kinglet. Here's the look-alike. But, well, the bill is not nearly as thin as we had on the ruby crown. But it has kind of a similar look to the eye here. But here's this is the keeper right here. The black, instead of being behind the wing bar here, it's between the two wing bars, and that's good. Also, if we look at it more carefully, we'll see the legs are all bluish gray, and look at the feet. This is a vireo. All vireos have blue-grayish legs, and this is the Hutton's vireo, found sparingly at Effie Yeaw. They have nested there, and here's another shot of, well, this is the kinglet right here, showing you the black here versus what we're trying to say right in here. Notice the thicker bill and so forth. So just kind of comparing these things, and there's the yellowish toes and so forth that we have with that bird, and a much thinner bill. But this shot was actually taken at Effie Yeaw, and I saw this Hutton's vireo carrying nest material. There's the diagnostic pattern that we have right there. And they have a lot of different calls. One of them is going zweep, 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 but they'll have other little calls they give as well. But anyway, I saw it was carrying nest material, and I followed it around, and there's the nest. So that was at Effie Yeaw. These birds are very partial. Hutton's vireo is very partial to live oaks. If you have live oaks, you have a good chance of finding the Hutton's vireo. Really a specialist for live oaks. Another bird that we have nesting right now at Effie Yeaw is the bush tit. And bush tits are really tiny little guys, about 3.5 inches in length, very, very tiny. And I looked at the eye color trying to sex them. This is a male, has a dark eye. There's that little bill that we have and so forth. These guys do a lot of clinging to things, as you see here. The light eye here tells us that this bush tit here is the female that we have. Thin little bill, and these guys are specialists for things like aphids and scale insects. That's what they really like. And they can perch and get to the underside of the leaves as well that way. So they're a fun bird to watch. And here's the female at the nest. And they make this wonderful hanging pendant here that has lots of camouflage on, lots of lichens and so forth. Use a lot of spiderweb silk to hold it together, let it expand as the babies are growing, that sort of thing. And there are several nests now that have been located at Effie Yeaw for the Saturday walk. And they're active nests now. And so they have to really be careful and make sure that's well camouflaged, because California scrub jays find that, and they'll have omelets for their breakfast, you know. All right. This is the white-breasted nuthatch that we're looking at here. It's the bird that has another niche. It goes down trees, sticking that bill into the bark, trying to find goodies. Very slender. This might end up someday being called the slender-billed nuthatch. There's three different groups of nuthatches in the United States in the east and in the Rockies and here in California. They all have different calls. And they all look pretty similar, but they have different bill structures and so forth. But they're considering a split. They're just checking out to see where the ranges are connected to see if they interbreed at all. So a lot of study going on. We'll recognize this as our yellow-rumped warbler right here. This is the Audubon's race. It has the yellowish throat as well to it. The myrtle race has a white throat, more of a supercilium that we have here. That's how they were looking. We have lots of yellow rumps that winter here in the valley, and they breed mostly in coniferous forests, so they won't stay with us much longer. But they're getting ready to leave. I had quite a few today yet at Effie Yeaw. See these wing bars right here? As the birds start to mature, those will widen up and they'll look more like this. So I took this yesterday at, I took this at Ansel-Hoffen, the picnic area, close to Effie Yeaw though. And this is our yellow-rumped warbler starting to assume the breeding plumage. This will even be more dramatic as time goes on here. 5 points of yellow on yellow-rumped warblers. On each breast, side of the breast, both right side, left side, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, and finally the rump, we saw earlier, is 5. So 5 points of yellow. Warblers are really designed to catch insects. That's the insect catcher bill. They're not nutcrackers, they're insect catchers. Like this guy right here. This is the orange-crowned warbler. This is the race lutescens that we have that nest here. They're nesting now. They like kind of a hillside, and they nest on the ground. A lot of warblers, strange enough, do nest on the ground. So there's different races of this orange-crowned warbler, but the one we have around here is the race lutescens. It's the brightest of them all. Very nice bird. And they call it orange crown because actually you rarely see it, but it does indeed. If you part the feathers or whatever this bird is doing here, you can see it has orange there. So when they call that orange crown warbler, you thought, well, boy, where did they get that name? But it does indeed have an orange crown. If you part the feathers, you can see that. They like to go into these leaf clusters and tear them apart to find insects that are in there and also insect larvae, things like that, eggs, whatever. I love the way birds can hang on with one foot like this and just exploit all these areas. Today I had my first Wilson's warblers coming back, so things are starting to change right now. Migration is starting in a big way now. The next few weeks will be just wild around here till the middle of May. This is the Wilson's warbler with the black cap that we have here. Very yellowish bird that we see here. Not a wild canary, as some people have called it, but it's, again, an insect eater, as you see here. And a lot of these will move on, going on farther north. Different races go to different places. In Montana, they nest really high in the high country, like about 8,000–9,000 feet usually. This bird also has a black cap, but look at the bill. It's not an insect eater. We're talking here, of course, about a goldfinch. This is the lesser goldfinch. A lot of white in the wings that we see here. Here's another male working on star thistle. So that's one good thing about them. We have too much star thistle, of course, but they'll exploit things like dandelion and a lot of seeds, things like that. If you have a feeder in your yard, they will sell their soul for Niger birdseed. They really like that. The female is much more muted. She's here on this alder eating the catkins here, and she's having her male right there, but you see she's much more muted than is the male because she has to do the tending of the eggs, sit on the nest for 2 weeks. So the males like the bright plumage to attract the females, and the females like to survive, so they have the muted plumage. Another goldfinch that we have right here. This is how they were looking just a month ago. This is the American goldfinch with the seed-eater bill right there we have, and it's black, isn't it? Keep that in mind. It's black there. They have whitish undertail coverage, which is always a good way to tell them from lesser goldfinches. Lesser goldfinches never have whitish undertail coverage, always colored like that. So we know we're talking here about American goldfinch, wing bars and so forth, as you see here. A little bit of yellow there coming in, but let's see what's going to happen to this bird. Goldfinches are interesting in the fact that they have 2 complete molts during the course of the year. Most birds only have 1 complete molt, and this species has, goldfinches have 2 complete molts. They're also true vegetarians. They don't eat insects. So as a result of that, they're a poor host for cowbirds. Cowbirds cannot survive their nest because they do not get the protein from the insects that they need. They don't do well on the regurgitation of the seeds from the goldfinch. Anyway, I digress. Look what's going to happen to this bird, though. As the hormones kick in, it goes through its second molt. It'll look like a whole different bird. There it is. Again, it still has the white undertail coverage. The bill is turned really bright pinkish orange, as you see here. There's the black crown that you have here, widen the wings. But look at that, nice. Goldfinch is a nice name for this bird. It's a finch, and it looks really pretty golden. A few will stay in the area, but many of them leave, whereas a lot of the lesser goldfinches will be nesting in our area. Actually, I took this shot up in Montana of one. They're a hardy bird. They even actually winter in Montana too, eating the salsify seeds that you see here. Salsify. And here's the cowbird, just to mention that they cannot make it. We had a cowbird in our backyard once that nested in a lesser goldfinch nest, and my wife documented the whole thing. She's going to write a paper about it. It was very rare to ever have that happen. Very few records of a cowbird nesting in a laying eggs in a goldfinch nest. Well, what happened was after they did hatch and so forth, but after about 4 or 5 days, the baby bird just died. It couldn't make it. So cowbirds have learned to pretty much leave goldfinch nest alone. Here's a pair of brown-headed cowbirds, male and female. They're coming through now too. I saw 4 of them in my yard today. They will be looking for nest hosts and she'll be dropped. This bird right here, the female can lay up to 40 eggs in a season. So my wife's dad used to do research. He was an ornithologist, did research on cowbirds, and discovered 40 eggs in the course of a season. All right. Well, here we have the wonderful western bluebird, and they are usually a pretty confiding bird, and we have some of the highest numbers in the nation here in the Sacramento area. The Folsom Christmas bird count often has the high count for the nation, which is kind of nice because they're a terrific bird to have. They'll often sit, here's the female that we have, a little more muted in color. They'll sit up on a branch or a wire and then drop down to the ground to feed often. So that kind of behavior gives them away too when you see them drop down from a fence or a limb to the grass to get an insect. How they see those insects from up high, I don't know, but they do, and they drop down and get them. Bluebirds are thrushes, and this is also a thrush that we have right here. This is one of the best songsters that we have in the bird world. This is the hermit thrush. Wintering here, if you have them in your backyard, you'll notice that they flick those wings a lot. They have the nice spotting on the breast, You can see this little eye ring that it has there, kind of whitish looking, just a little buffier than usual. And they like to eat a lot of berries. They'll take insects and so forth too, but they're a big berry eater as well. Wonderful bird. If you have one in your yard, they have rusty tail too. It's a good mark on them. Starting in May, we'll get the Swainson's thrushes coming through, which look quite similar, more even a larger buffy eye ring, but they lack the rufous tail that we have here, a little different spotting. Well, I've been talking now for 58 minutes, it looks like. I'll keep going here for a little bit longer. We have the house finches. Of course, we want to learn all we can about house finches. So this is the male, and we can see the breast is pretty much unstreaked, but then we have a lot of streaking down on the belly and flanks. Look at the bills. Bills always tell us a lot about what birds do. And this is a seed eater. The female that we have right here lacks any line in here that would distinguish it from a purple finch. Also, her streaking is much muddier than you'd find that. So here we have a male and a female house finch. And very common, if you have a hanging flower pot in your backyard, you might even try to nest in that. They like that sort of nesting site. But here's a bird that we've had an influx of this winter. It's been a good year for purple finches. So purple finches do have a little larger bill. See, these look almost like they're pushed in on the house finch, just stubby little bills. And we look at this guy, and we see we have this. It takes 2 years to get into full adult plumage. So we see a bird like this. It could be a first-year male. We don't know. Or it might be a female. But anyway, this is a good mark on it, the streaking on it. And then, of course, knowing the calls is very helpful, too. Been a lot hanging. Well, this winter, a lot were hanging around the pond there at Effie Yeaw. And here's the male. And even though it's called purple finch, it's more like, well, almost like a strawberry finch to me. But it has this nice auricular area in here that's quite dark. And the bill is much more massive and straighter culmen on it and so forth than we had with the house finch. Another shot of the purple finch. Pretty striking bird. Well, love the American River. We're really lucky to have the American River Parkway. And where we have the river, we have birds. So we'll go through a few of them right here. We all know about mallards. Well, mallards, unlike the geese, do not form a permanent pair bond, but once they're through mating, it's all up to the female to lay the eggs and tend to the young. These guys go off and form bachelor groups. Then we have the common merganser, which is, when I grew up in Montana, people called them the fish ducks. Fish ducks because they do go after lots of fish, minnows, crayfish, things like that. They have nice orangish feet. White is very prominent in the wing when it flies. And they have this messed up hair that you see right here. It's really crusty red and a nice white throat. Here we go again. Here's that nice white throat, that crest that they have here. They're very comfortable in the water. They have a pretty thin bill that you see here. And they'll do a lot of this submarining. They'll put their head in the water and look for prey as they go along. And they do nest along the American River, and a lot of them do leave the area too. But we do have some that nest along the river. The male looks entirely different. This is a good case, a good situation for sexual dimorphism, where the males and females are so different looking. So here's the female talking to the drake that we have over here. Very white. He looks more like this in good light. You're like, so kind of a greenish head that you can see here. That is, again, from light refracted. There's no greenish pigment at all involved. And a nice orangish bill, and there's the bird there. So they're fun to see, and they're common on the American River. If you go back to the pond area at Effie Yeaw, you can see the wood ducks. They're not as abundant there right now because they've taken off to nest in various places, but this winter I've seen 10 or 12 at a time back there. So the pond is really loaded up with a lot of the arums right now. We've got a lot of mosquito fern, mosquito fern and duckweed both in there. So it's almost all covered. But the birds chew away at that, so I guess they like it. If it gets too thick, it can smother the vegetation below, though, and take up the oxygen that way. But hopefully, it'll make it all right. They're one of the most beautiful ducks in North America. When they fly, they have kind of a squared off tail, short like that. Next bird that we're talking about here is the snowy egret down along the river. And we're always struck by those golden slippers, as we call them. And they get these nuptial plumes that really were almost the demise of the species. The species is almost hunted by plume hunters to extinction back in the early 1900s, before the Audubon Society came along and the bird gained protection. I had an old friend who's called George Waldy, that told me that he lived in Oakland, and back in 1946, they drove from Oakland all the way up to Marysville to see a snowy egret. So they have rebounded from almost going under, and now they're quite common here. See them fly along the river like this, golden slippers there, and an all blackish bill that you can see here, as opposed to the great egret. I have to think of the name. This bird, while I've been birding over the years, this bird has had 3 different names. It's had the name American egret, common egret, and now it's called great egret. So it's conspecific with the great egret in Africa too now. But see, the toes and the feet are dark. I've had people, I guess at William B. Pond rec area the other day, and someone says, "We've got a white crane over there." And well, what it was a great egret. Cranes fly with their necks straight out. They don't have this little S shape to them here at all. So you can tell cranes always with their necks straight, but egrets with their neck looped up like that. And telling them apart in the field by size is really easy. The great egret, as you see here, and then the little snowy that we have down here with the feet up, just to drive home the point that it's a snowy egret. But these plumes are what almost did it in women's hats and so forth in the early 1900s. Game wardens were killed trying to protect these birds from the plume hunters. So here we have our great egret and our great blue heron that we probably know very well. If you have kids on a field trip, it's always wonderful to show them these larger birds. They can relate to them. Even if they don't have binoculars, they can see them because they're big birds. They fly around. They look like, almost like the dinosaurs that they actually evolved from. So there we are, great blue heron. We have a very small heron around here too on the river. This is the green heron. Very interesting little bird that does nest in the area. Can use a lure to fish with. They'll drop a feather into the water sometimes, hang down from a perch and grab the fish and come up to inspect the feather. So crafty little birds here. Another one. These are all taken right there at Effie Yeaw as well. We have the double-crested cormorant. They often work up and down the river. They don't nest there at Effie Yeaw, but they nest elsewhere here. And the thing about them that I really like is that beautiful eye that they have. And they get the name double-crested because in the breeding plumage, those plumes show up like that on both sides of the head. And those little crests are called, as on both sides, double-crested cormorant. There's other cormorant species in the state, like pelagic and brants, but they're coastal birds. This bird does well both in freshwater and saltwater, whereas the brants and pelagic cormorants only hang around the saltwater. You often see them with their wings out like this drying because they have a very poor oil gland for waterproofing. Most birds can really waterproof the feathers well, but these can't. But that's to their advantage because they fish underwater a lot, and if they were really oiled up, they would bob back up to the surface. It'd take a lot of energy to stay under the water. So they have forsaken some of that oil gland for the fact that they can be more adroit under the waves, so to speak. And it works out. Then they have to dry them out later on. But I always loved to look at the patterns, the intricate patterns of all the feathers in these birds too. And there are those eyes. Sometimes you see a bird like this flying down the river, and it doesn't lift its wings above its body. It's flying with the wings always on a downbeat. It's never above the horizontal, usually just down below with a nice white wing stripe that you see here. And of course, we're talking here about the spotted sandpiper. In the wintertime, they look a lot like this. One of the good marks is this white wedge that comes upon them here. They have the yellowish legs, and they will bob their tail a lot of tail bobbing. A little bit of a supercilium here and a bill that's kind of like that. So people often wonder, well, why are they called spotted sandpipers anyway? Well, it's because in the breeding plumage, they are spotted. There you are. So they're really a striking bird in breeding plumage. I know because it's breeding plumage, the bill has gotten brighter. Again, when the hormones start to kick in, the bills go from dull to bright. All right. Also, wintering in our area, we have greater yellowlegs, commonly out in the ag fields, particularly like Yellow Basin, places like that. But they also like to work along the river here, and they'll be migrating through here pretty much, be gone soon, but you'll see them along the river as well. Greater yellow legs. And indeed, their legs are quite yellow. The greater yellow legs is larger than a killdeer. So if you use the killdeer as a reference, it's larger. We do have lesser yellow legs sparingly, particularly during migration periods, and lesser yellow legs is about the size of a killdeer, same length. So if you have a killdeer nearby, you can always tell greater and lesser yellow legs apart just by the killdeer comparison. Killdeer size, it's lesser. But there's a report for lesser yellow legs from Effie Yeaw on eBird, but I've never seen one there, so I'm not sure. They're hard birds to identify if you don't really think it through. American kestrel. Gosh, we love seeing the kestrels. They're a small falcon. They're the smallest falcon in North America. All our falcons in North America have these dark eyes that you can see here. This is the male that we have. The males have just a single terminal band that you see here, and they have the blue on the wing covers that you can see here. But the striking bird, I had a friend once, Rich Dahlkup, that thought a good name for this bird. When they changed the name, originally it was called a sparrowhawk many, many years ago. And he thought the name they should have for it would be grasshopper falcon, because they do like grasshoppers. But ended up being called the American kestrel. So there we are. The female is all brownish. She doesn't have the bluish wing coverts there, and her tail has lots of barring on it as well, and is larger than the male. In raptors, mostly the females are larger than the males. So usually it means that females, because they're larger, will, in the wintertime when they're not paired up, they will command the better, richer territories for feeding. They kick the little scrawny males out and the females take over. There you go. Here's a male that we have here with the blue showing that's got probably a fence lizard that it has there for dinner. But you can see the helmet-like look that it has to it. I saw them inspecting some acorn woodpecker holes for nesting, but I don't see that they have nested this year at Effie Yeaw for sure, but they could be. I just haven't spotted the nest yet. Having lunch there. So they really like to go after lizards, things like that, as well as grasshoppers and so forth. They will catch birds, but the next species is the bird catcher. This one tries maybe and catches a few, but the next one catches a lot of birds. And this is the merlin. Old name was pigeon hawk, because it's about the size of a pigeon. Actually, it's almost the same size as the merlin, just a little chunkier, little bulkier looking to it. Dark eye again for it. has a lot of barring on the tail. It's in the shot right here. You see the barring on the tail that you have here. Has a pretty good supercilium that you see here, streaking on. This is a female merlin that we have here. The female merlin, again, is larger than the male, more brownish back. The male would be more of a bluish sheen to it. They come down in the wintertime. There's three races that we have. This is columbarius, the more common one we have here. But they fly away. They don't have the light, feathery flight of a kestrel. They fly like they're late for an appointment. They just go straight out and really go fast, and they can catch birds. Sometimes I'm down along the river and I want to shout at people or grab them by the arm because they're not looking up in the air. There's bald eagles flying around and they don't see them. They're too busy throwing rocks in the river or something. So I don't know. But I often have, not every trip, but I frequently see bald eagles at Effie Yeaw. Here's one that I took at Effie Yeaw. Here's another shot of one that was fishing there at Effie Yeaw and actually had some good luck. So we do have adult bald eagles nesting up at Lake Natomas. So they cruise downriver a bit. And bald eagles have been doing very well since the banning of DDT, and their numbers have grown substantially now. I guess they estimate around 300,000 now in the lower 48. So that's impressive. You might see a bird like this and wonder what it is, but this is the immature bald eagle. The bill now is dark, and the giveaway here is it's not a golden eagle. It's a huge bird. It's not a golden eagle because the golden eagle would never have these white axillaries that we have here, these armpit-like things. That's a distinctive character of a bald eagle. The tail is very mottled looking, not a crisp black band like a golden eagle would have. We don't get golden eagles flying over Effie Yeaw. In fact, I've only had one fly over my house at Carmichael in many, many years, so don't worry about them too much. So, but bald eagles, yes. We could quit any time. It's 7:14 now. I've been going for an hour and a quarter. Or do you want to look at some accipiters, Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks? I don't want to wear you out. I could talk all night about birds. What's the deal, Kelly? Can you hear me, Kelly? Whoops.
We can do a few more if everyone's willing to stay. Please stay. If you have somewhere else to get. Oh, I'm seeing a lot of more time. Keep going. I'd like to see more.
Okay.
The crowd is speaking.
All right, we'll go through a few more and I'll have my glass of water here.
Thank you to everyone who's been here. We're so grateful for you. It's wonderful to see you here, and we hope to see you again in tomorrow's lecture. If you're able to come back with us for that, Tony Kurz is going to be chatting with us, and maybe we'll see some of you this weekend. All right, we'll keep going.
Okay, well, what we have right here is one of the real bird hawks. This is the Cooper's hawk that we have here. And I photographed this thing and it captured a starling, actually, and it just about consumed it all. But this is an adult. It has the barring that we have here, the rufous barring, not the streaking we're going to see on the immatures. It also have more of a reddish eye, not a yellowish eye like the juvenile birds will have. Kind of a dark cap that we have here, dark back that we have here. You get some banding on the tail, a lot of white on the undertail covers that we have here. Strong legs. The tarsus here is very strong. This bird, Cooper's hawks have nested there at Effie Yeaw. I haven't found a nest yet this year, but they have nested in most years at Effie Yeaw. So this is the male that we have. Well, this might be the female. That was a huge bird. So I think it was the female, possibly. In flight, you can see the barring that we were just looking at right here. The tail is kind of rounded, we see. That's a real good character to keep in mind. You can see the barring on the tail as well. The head sticks out pretty well on this expanded wing right here. The tail is really long, acting as a rudder when it flies through the trees in the chase of birds. The bird is an expert flyer, can fly through just little tiny crevices and cracks in the trees. Very, very fast. Accipiter is a good name for this genus because, or this family, because they really are fast flyers. Now here's the immature, or I should say juvenile bird that we have here. No, not barring, but rather streaking that we have here. You see the banding on the tail, and again, looks like these outer retroces are shorter, and so it gives the tail a rounded look. Head sticks out. So sometimes people think of this as like a flying cross for the ID of the flight silhouette. All right. Another shot that we have right here of a Cooper's hawk again. Coopers tend to have a little more white to the tip of the tail, although the white wears off pretty rapidly on birds, so it's not a fail-safe mark. But this will have a light eye that we have here. Vertical streaking is the juvenile bird again. Now, check this bird out. I don't see the graduated tail feathers here. It's more squared off that we have here. The streaking looks a lot muddier than I had with the looking at the juvenile Cooper's hawk. And it seems like it's smaller headed. Head doesn't protrude as much. If you draw a line from the bend of the wing over here, it seems like it comes right even with the head. This is indeed a sharp-shinned hawk. Now, these are really hard birds to identify, even for experts sometimes. But if you see one of these accipiters in July around here and in the summer months, you know it'll be a Cooper's, because sharp shins do not breed in the valley. They take off. They're breed in the mountains. But Coopers are permanent residents here all year long. So this is the Juve Sharpie, another Juve Sharpie that you can see right here. The tail doesn't look like it has those graduated tail feathers, fairly short here. This one, sometimes they even have muddier streaking that you see on this bird right here. Sharp-shinned hawk. And again, sharp-shinned hawk, you can see how broad the streaking is right here on it. Juvenile bird, yellowish iris that we see here. Long tail. About the time this bird is flying over, you hear the bush tits just going crazy. Look up in the air and you see why. Bush tits always find these birds before I do. And Sharpies will take a bush tit. They take pretty small birds. Sharp-shinned hawk adult that we have right here. Adult because it has the barring, not the streaking. There's the tail again. A little bit of white on the tips, but not as much as Coopers usually have. And again, you get these whitish undertail covers that both species have. They're just hard to identify usually. I use call a lot too. If I hear a kek, 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 I know I've got a Cooper's hawk, for example. All right, so we're looking at this bird now. We've learned a little bit about these things. We can identify this one flying over. We know it's a juvenile bird. Secondly, we start looking at the wing looks and the head sticking out. Oh, I like that. And oh, I love the way the tail looks. So we're going to call that a Cooper's hawk. That's what it is. Here we have a yellow-billed magpie that was ganging up on the sharp-shinned hawk. The magpies got together in a little fighter squadron and were trying to chase this Cooper's hawk out. Not Cooper's hawk, the sharp-shinned hawk out that we had right here. So the Sharpies can fan that tail out. So, whoops. Sharpies can fan the tail out, but still that outer rectrix there is pretty much the same length as the others that we have there. So give you that look. But look at the line between the bends of the wing and the head there. So, and the size. It's not much bigger than the magpie. So there you go. Again, with Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks, the females are larger than the males. So if you see this silhouette flying overhead, that's all you need to know is looking at the tail, proportions and so forth. That's a sharp-shinned hawk. Okay. And of course, this is an easy one with the turkey vultures that we have. They really like to come in after the salmon have spawned out and they're dying, and they do a great job there cleaning up our environment here. This is interesting to me because in Sacramento, gulls are, this species of gull is quite uncommon. In fact, I used to have to write up a rare bird report for it every time until we started understanding that this bird is returning every year. This is, I think, the 12th year now for this western gull. If you go to San Francisco, along the coast, they're all over the place, but they're not inland species. They're usually near salt water. But this bird comes in every year, it seems like, to the same rock, basically at Effie Yeaw, and it has this kind of a small looking eye here, just one red dot on the big bulbous bill that we have here. Look how big this bill is here, just protrudes as we see here. This Goni's angle is large. And it has pink legs and pink feet, pink legs that you see here, and a fairly dark mantle that you see here. Because you see lots of herring gulls in the river that are much paler that you have here, still have pink legs and so forth, but they have more of a sloping forehead, like so, still the red dot. This is an adult herring gull that we have right here. See lots of herring gulls coming in with the salmon run, but the western gull is pretty uncommon. There's our western gull again, that big Goni's angle, big thick bill that we have. And they have really a nice extensive gray wedge under the wing that you see when it puts its wings up. So this is typical of a western gull. California gulls that we have along the river have just a narrow little wedge along here. And then they have red and black on the tip of the bill and the dark eye that we have here. It's an adult California gull. And then, of course, we have lots of ringbill gulls that the adults have the ringbill. That's not a good mark because California gulls can have that in other ages. It takes 4 years to be an adult. And so some of the younger birds can have that too. But look at the pale eye and then the color of the feet. And there's other things too, but we won't get into gulls too much tonight. There's too much other things to talk about. I think I'll probably end with a note here. Pardon? No, probably end with just these next two birds. That'll be long enough, I think. Cedar waxwings are really gorgeous birds. They stay with us quite a while. The last ones will be leaving the first week in June. They wait for the berries to get ripe farther north. So they linger around quite a while. And then they come back as soon as they've nested. They'll start showing about the third or fourth week in August. They'll come back to our area. And they're very social, form big flocks and so forth. They have these waxy wingtips, and hence the name cedar waxwing. And this is a degree of status with these birds. Young birds don't have any red waxy things. This is the carotenoids that they get from eating fruits and things like that. That gives them this waxy tip to the tail, to the wing. But you can tell rank basically by one bird that has a lot more. So females will select males that have a lot of this because they're more experienced. Yellow tip to the tail that we have here. They're very social birds. You see them passing fruit back and forth, things like that. Very high, thin calls. If your hearing is still good, you can hear the high, thin notes of cedar waxwings. And just a gorgeous, gorgeous bird. Every feather is in place. Also at Effie Yeaw, particularly in, I'd say November is one of the best months for seeing lots of phainopeplas. This year I've seen 6, 7, 8 at a time on my walks there. This is the phainopepla. It's the name phainopepla is also the name of the genus. It's the genus and specific epithet are called, it's Phainopepla nitens. Phainopepla means shining cloak from the Greek. And indeed, this is a very iridescent type of plumage that it has. Nice reddish eye and so forth. And I like that crest. When it flies, you get a white flash in the wing and so forth. So that's probably where we need to stop. We won't go into ravens and stuff like that. You've endured me long enough here. So I can take some questions. If you have some, we can go from there. Okay? Anybody? Do I have to do anything about muting or anything like that?
Yeah, we have one question in the chat. Which hawk makes the kick, kick, kick sound, Cooper or Sharp? I hope I did that right.
The Cooper's hawk goes a kick, 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 like that. Particularly when they have the nest, when they're around the nest, they really will give that a lot. I could give it to you right here, I think. Let me see here. I will just get my little feature here, explore birds, and I'll go with a Cooper's and listen to it. It didn't take too long. Okay. Is that the call you're wondering about? It's Cooper's. Okay, Cooper's Hawk. Okay.
That's a great. What is the app? Is that an app that you're using?
Actually, this one is the Merlin app. I think Merlin app is has good calls on it here. If we were to do the sharp shin hawk, okay, here we go, sharp shin hawk. It's higher pitch, it's a smaller bird, high pitched little thing. This is the Sharpie, sharp shin hawk.
We got another question in the chat
Okay.
From Kathy here. Did you say there were several of the Western gulls in Effie Yeaw, or was it just one that keeps returning?
Just one.
Okay.
It comes back and it defends that little bit of territory there. It'll chase off herring gulls that come in. It gets very aggressive towards other gulls that come in. And if people get too close to it sometimes, because there's always kids down there throwing rocks in the river and stuff like that, it'll go to the far side of the river, upstream a bit, and you can see it up there. But if no one's disturbing it, it's right back there. There's a grove of alder trees along the river there as you get towards the northeast corner. And then there's that little gravel bar out there, and that's where it likes to stay. And so 12 years. These gulls can live easily to over 20 years of age. So it may be back for a few more years. Once a gull gets past the first few years of its life, there's a survivorship curve that starts to tail out and goes for a long time once they get past that. The first 3 or 4 years there's a lot of attrition in gulls. A lot of them die, don't make it. Just like with hawks and so forth. Even peregrine falcons have a high attrition rate because they just are not good enough at hunting and starve to death. So red-tailed hawks, things like that. So they don't all make it, that's for sure. But the birds are so fascinating. I mean, we could talk all night long about some of these things like common swifts. They put tags on in Europe because they couldn't figure out where they were wintering, or not where they were roosting in Africa.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll do one more question. We have one here in the chat from Susan. Do many migrating warblers come through Effie Yeaw?
A fair number do. It's not like the East. In the East, you get many more warbler species because you have that broadleaf deciduous forest back there. But we will be getting Townsend's warblers coming through, hermit warblers coming through, Nashville warblers coming through, besides orange crowns, and we'll get McGilvery's warblers coming through. So Wilson's warblers, there's a fair number that come through. Probably, maybe orange crown might nest there on the hillside somewhere. Most of them go out to the foothills, mostly. Black-throated gray warblers usually are more in the foothills when they nest. Get good numbers of black-throated grays coming through. So.
All right, that wraps up our lecture tonight. Big wholehearted thank you to the incredible Ed Harper sharing his knowledge and his beautiful photos with us tonight. Big round of applause wherever you are tonight.
Yeah. Time to change from water to wine here.
And big thank you to everyone tuning in with us and sticking all the way to the end, spending your evening with us talking about some of the incredible birds in our area. We hope to see you in the lecture tomorrow, see some of you this weekend, and we'll see you out on the trails. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody, for putting up with me.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.